The private jet's engines hummed as Jackson Kane stared out the window, Manhattan's skyline shrinking beneath him. The wedding invitation sat on the table, heavy cardstock embossed with gold lettering taunting him with memories he'd spent 5 years trying to forget. His best friend was getting married in the same coastal town where Jackson had made the biggest mistake of his life, letting Hannah Davis walk away. "Mr. Kane, we'll be landing in Sandpoint in approximately 2 hours," the flight attendant informed him, refilling his barely touched whiskey. Jackson nodded, adjusting his custom-made suit. At 34, he'd built Kane Shipping International into a global empire worth billions. He had everything: mansions on 3 continents, a fleet of luxury vehicles, art collections worth more than some small countries' GDPs, everything except the one person who had mattered most. "Would you like to review the quarterly reports before landing, sir?" His assistant, Melanie, gestured to the tablet in her hand. "Not now." Jackson's voice was distant. He hadn't returned to Sandpoint since that summer. He'd been 27 then, ambitious but not yet successful, and Hannah had been 25, brilliant and passionate about marine conservation. They'd fallen hard and fast during those 3 months. He'd spent overseeing the construction of his first major port facility. The jet began its descent, and Jackson felt his stomach tighten, not from the altitude change but from the growing possibility that somewhere in this small coastal town, Hannah might still exist, living a life without him. The wedding venue was exactly what one would expect from Ethan Powell, extravagant, yet tasteful. The historic lighthouse turned luxury resort perched on rocky cliffs overlooking the Pacific. Jackson had sent his congratulatory gift ahead, a 100-foot yacht that probably cost more than the entire wedding. "Jackson Kane, as I live and breathe." Ethan's voice boomed across the hotel lobby. "The elusive billionaire graces us with his presence." Jackson embraced his oldest friend, forcing a smile. "Wouldn't miss it, Powell. Congratulations." "About time you came back to Sandpoint," Ethan said, slapping him on the shoulder. "Everyone's at the welcome dinner. Let's get you a drink." The seaside restaurant was filled with familiar faces, old college friends, business associates, and Sandpoint locals who'd known Ethan since childhood. Jackson nodded politely as he made his way through the crowd, accepting handshakes and fielding the usual questions about his latest business ventures. "There's someone I want you to meet," Ethan said, guiding Jackson toward the bar. "My fiancé's maid of honor is." Jackson froze. Standing at the bar in a simple blue dress was Hannah. Her chestnut hair was shorter now, falling just past her shoulders, but her eyes were the same deep green that had haunted his dreams for 5 years. She turned and the recognition flashed across her face, followed quickly by something else, pain perhaps, or anger. He couldn't tell. "Hannah," he breathed, barely audible over the restaurant's ambient noise. She recovered quickly, extending her hand with cool professionalism. "Mr. Kane." What a surprise! Ethan looked between them, confusion evident. "You two know each other. We met briefly years ago," Hannah said before Jackson could respond. "During the port construction project, briefly." Jackson felt the word like a physical blow. Their 3 months together reduced to a passing acquaintance. "Small world," Ethan exclaimed. "Hannah runs the Marine Conservation Institute now. She's been fighting against overdevelopment along the coast, quite successfully, I might add." "Is that right?" Jackson managed, unable to tear his gaze from her face. She'd achieved exactly what she'd set out to do 5 years ago. "If you'll excuse me," Hannah said, setting down her untouched champagne glass. "I need to check on some details for tomorrow." She walked away before Jackson could say another word, leaving him with the bitter taste of regret in his mouth. The rehearsal dinner was held in the lighthouse's glass-enclosed observatory. Jackson sat at a table with strangers, barely touching his seafood as he watched Hannah across the room. She laughed with other guests, gave a touching speech about the bride, and skillfully avoided being within 10 feet of him all evening. "She wouldn't even look at me," Jackson confided to Ethan later at the hotel bar. Ethan swirled his scotch thoughtfully. I had no idea you two had history. We were together that summer. I was crazy about her. Jackson stared into his drink. When the port was finished, I asked her to come with me to New York, and she said no. She had just started at the conservation center, said she couldn't leave her work, her purpose. I told her I had to go. The company was just taking off, investors were lining up, we were at different points in our lives. So what happened? Ethan prompted. I left, told myself it was the right decision, buried myself in work, built an empire. Jackson's laugh was hollow. And I've regretted it every day since. The next morning, Jackson walked along the beach, his shoes dangling from one hand as the cold sand squeezed between his toes. The wedding wasn't until afternoon, and he needed to clear his head. The familiar coastline stretched before him, largely unchanged except for a few new buildings in the distance. You're up early. He turned to find Hannah standing a few yards away, wearing running clothes, her cheeks flushed from exertion. Couldn't sleep, he admitted. Ironic, considering your 5-star suite probably costs more per night than my monthly rent. Jackson winced at her tone. Hannah, can we talk? About what, Jackson? Ancient history. 5 years isn't ancient. It is when you've moved on. She crossed her arms defensively. Congratulations, by the way. Kane Shipping International makes the Forbes list every year now. You've been keeping tabs on me. A small flicker of hope ignited in his chest. Hard not to when your company keeps trying to build ports and marinas in protected areas. Her voice was sharp. Your latest project in Costa Rica would have destroyed a coral reef if my organization hadn't intervened. Jackson blinked. That was you. The injunction came from an international conservation group. I'm the director of International Marine Habitat Protection, she said, a hint of pride breaking through her anger. That's what I do now. I fight against wealthy developers who think money can buy them the right to destroy natural habitats. Wealthy developers like me, Jackson said quietly. Hannah sighed, some of the fight leaving her. I have to go. I've got bride duties to attend to. Hannah, wait, but she was already jogging away, leaving him alone with the crashing waves and the weight of what could have been. The wedding ceremony was picture-perfect: blue skies, gentle breeze, and a string quartet playing as Ethan's bride walked down the aisle. Jackson stood with the other groomsmen, his eyes repeatedly drifting to Hannah, who looked breathtaking in her bridesmaid's dress. During the reception, after several glasses of champagne and watching Hannah dance with various wedding guests, Jackson finally gathered his courage. May I have this dance? He asked, approaching her as a slow song began. Hannah hesitated, then nodded curtly. One dance. The moment his hand touched the small of her back, Jackson felt the same electricity that had drawn them together 5 years ago. She kept a careful distance between them, but he could feel her pulse quicken where his fingers rested against her wrist. You've done amazing things with the Conservation Institute, he said. Thank you. I mean it, Hannah, you were right to stay. You've made a real difference here. She finally met his eyes. And you've made billions. I guess we both got what we wanted. Did we? Jackson's voice was quiet. Because I've spent 5 years building an empire that feels completely hollow without you in it. Hannah stiffened in his arms. Don't do this, Jackson. Not here, not now. When then, I let you go once because I thought my ambition was more important than us. It was the biggest mistake of my life. You made your choice, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We both did. The song ended and Hannah stepped away. Thank you for the dance. Jackson watched her disappear into the crowd, feeling as though he'd lost her all over again. Later that night, unable to sleep, Jackson wandered to the lighthouse's observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly above him, and the ocean glittered beneath the moonlight. Couldn't sleep again. He turned to find Hannah standing in the doorway, wrapped in a cardigan against the night chill. I was thinking about the night we met, he said. Right here during that fundraiser for the Marine Sanctuary. Hannah smiled despite herself. You donated $50,000 to impress me. Best money I ever spent. She joined him at the railing, keeping a careful distance. Jackson, why are you really here? You could have sent a gift, made an excuse. Ethan's my oldest friend, and you just happen to have a free weekend in your busy schedule. Jackson turned to face her. I've thought about coming back 100 times over the years. But I was afraid you'd moved on, afraid you'd be with someone else. I dated, she admitted. Nothing serious, me neither. At her skeptical look, he added, the tabloids exaggerate. There's been no one important since you. Hannah stared out at the ocean. Do you remember what you said when you left? Some dreams are bigger than love. That stuck with me all these years. I was wrong, Jackson said simply. So incredibly wrong. Success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. And what about now? Your life is in New York, running a global corporation. My life is here, protecting the coastline, often from companies like yours. Jackson took a deep breath. What if I told you I've been rethinking the direction of Kane shipping? That I've been looking into sustainable practices, eco-friendly technologies? Hannah raised an eyebrow. I'd say that's hard to believe given your company's track record. Check your email tomorrow, Jackson said. I'm sending you the plans for our new initiative, Kane Marine Conservation Foundation. I've allocated $200 million to start. Is this some elaborate way to impress me again? Her voice was skeptical, but her eyes showed a flicker of interest. Partly, he admitted with a small smile. But it's also because you were right, about everything. I've built my fortune on practices that damage the environment, and I want to change that. Whether you give me another chance or not, that's the right thing to do. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. I'd need to see more than promises, Jackson. I understand. He took a step closer. But I'm asking for a chance to show you that people that I can change. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, Jackson thought she might turn away. Instead, she said, I have a conference in New York next month. Marine protection policy? Have dinner with me while you're there, he said quickly. Just dinner, no pressure. Hannah considered him carefully. One dinner. Jackson's smile lit up his face. That's all I'm asking for. The next morning, as Jackson prepared to leave for his return flight, he found Hannah in the hotel lobby. I checked my email, she said without preamble. The foundation plans look impressive. They're just the beginning, he assured her. I meant what I said last night. Hannah nodded, then handed him a business card. My direct number, for when I'm in New York. As their fingers brushed, Jackson felt that familiar spark. I'll be counting the days. 4 weeks later, Jackson stood outside Le Bernardin, nervously adjusting his tie. When Hannah arrived, wearing a simple green dress that matched her eyes, his heart nearly stopped. You look beautiful, he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. Your restaurant choice is subtle, she teased as they were seated. Le Bernardin was known for its sustainable seafood practices. I've been doing my homework, Jackson admitted. Did you know they only serve fish caught through sustainable methods? Hannah laughed, a genuine, warm sound that made Jackson realize how much he'd missed it. I did know that, actually. Their conversation flowed easily as they shared stories from the past 5 years. Jackson told her about building his company, the challenges and triumphs, while Hannah described her work protecting marine habitats around the world. I've seen the changes your foundation is already making, she said as they lingered over dessert. The research funding, the cleanup initiatives, it's impressive. I have excellent advisors, Jackson said, including a new environmental impact team that reviews every project before it's approved. And what does your board think about this new direction? They were skeptical at first, but the positive publicity has been good for stock prices and the tax benefits don't hurt. He leaned forward. But honestly, Hannah, this isn't just for show. I want to build something meaningful, something that makes a difference. Like what we talked about that summer, she said softly. Exactly like that. You helped me see what was possible beyond just profit margins. As they left the restaurant, Jackson asked, How long are you in New York? 3 days. The conference ends Friday. Have dinner with me again tomorrow. Hannah hesitated only briefly. Okay, 1 dinner became 2, then 3. Jackson showed her his latest project converting one of his shipping vessels to run on clean energy, and Hannah introduced him to her colleagues at the conference. By Friday, something had shifted between them. "I'm flying back tomorrow," Hannah said as they walked through Central Park after her final conference session. "I know." Jackson took her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. "But I was thinking, my jet is going to be empty. You could fly back in comfort instead of coach." "On one condition," Hannah said, surprising him. "You come with me, see the conservation center, the work we're doing there." "Really?" Jackson couldn't hide his excitement. "Really? I think it's time you saw firsthand what we're trying to protect." The next day, as they flew towards Sandpoint, Hannah showed Jackson her latest research on ocean conservation. He listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and taking notes. "You're really serious about this," she observed, "about making a difference." "Yes, about you, absolutely." She blushed slightly. "It's not going to be easy, you know, your lifestyle, my work, they're still in different worlds." "Different worlds that can intersect," Jackson countered. "Technology makes remote work possible. I can run meetings from anywhere." "And Sandpoint could use some corporate investment, the sustainable kind, of course." Hannah smiled. "You've thought about this." "I've thought about nothing else since seeing you at the wedding." When they landed, Jackson experienced Sandpoint through new eyes as Hannah showed him the conservation center, introducing him to her team and explaining their various projects. "This is where we monitor the whale migration," she said, pointing to a sophisticated tracking system. "But our equipment is outdated. We need better technology to track illegal fishing in protected areas." Jackson made a mental note to look into it. "What else do you need?" "Better enforcement capabilities, more research vessels, political leverage." She gave him a knowing look. "Things that money and influence can help with." "Consider it done," he said without hesitation. That evening they walked along the same beach where they'd reunited just a week earlier. This time, Jackson took her hand naturally and she intertwined her fingers with his. "I've been thinking," Jackson said as they watched the sunset. "What if Kane Shipping established its sustainability headquarters here in Sandpoint? It would bring jobs, investment, and put us right on the front line of coastal conservation." Hannah stopped walking. "You do that?" "In a heartbeat if it meant being near you." He faced her fully now. "Hannah, I know it's only been a week since we reconnected, but these feelings never went away, not for me." "Not for me either," she admitted quietly. "But Jackson, I won't leave my work, not even for you." "I'm not asking you to, I'm asking if there's room in your life for both your work and me." He took both her hands in his. "Because I'm willing to restructure my entire company, relocate offices, whatever it takes to make this us work." Hannah studied his face. "You really have changed." 5 years of regret will do that to a person," he smiled ruefully. "So what do you say? Are you willing to give us another chance?" Instead of answering, Hannah leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft at first, then deepened as 5 years of longing poured out between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. "I'll take that as a yes," he whispered. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Jackson opened the Kane Sustainability Division in Sandpoint, hiring marine biologists, environmental engineers, and conservation experts. He split his time between New York and the coast, gradually shifting more operations to the West Coast. Hannah watched in amazement as he transformed not just his business practices, but his life priorities. They worked together to establish new marine protected areas, using his influence to navigate the complex regulatory landscape while her expertise guided the conservation efforts. "The board meeting went well," Jackson said one evening as they sat on Hannah's porch overlooking the ocean. "They've approved the full funding for the artificial reef project." "That's wonderful," Hannah beamed, setting aside her research papers. "The marine life will have a chance to regenerate now." Jackson smiled, watching her excitement. "You know, I've been thinking about something you said when we first reconnected, about dreams being bigger than love." "Oh," Hannah raised an eyebrow. I think I finally understand what was wrong with my perspective. It's not that dreams are bigger than love, it's that the right dreams include love. He took her hand. My dreams are bigger and better with you in them. Hannah's eyes softened. Mine too. A year after Ethan's wedding, Jackson and Hannah stood together at the grand opening of the Kane Marine Research Center, a state-of-the-art facility funded by Jackson's foundation and staffed with top scientists, including Hannah as the executive director. Ready for the ribbon cutting? Jackson asked, straightening his tie nervously. Almost. Hannah reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. I wanted to give you something first. Jackson unfolded it to find the original business card she'd given him in the hotel lobby a year ago. On the back, in her neat handwriting, was a simple question. Will you marry me? He looked up, stunned, to find Hannah watching him with a mixture of love and amusement. Is this for real? He asked, his voice barely audible. Very real, she confirmed. I know it's traditionally the man who asks, but I didn't want to wait. This past year has shown me that some things are worth holding onto and never letting go. You're one of those things, Jackson Kane. Jackson pulled her close, kissing her deeply as camera flashes went off around them. The press had arrived for the ribbon cutting and captured the unexpected proposal instead. Is that a yes? Hannah laughed against his lips. That's a definite yes, Jackson confirmed, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Although you beat me to it, I was planning to ask you tonight. Hannah's eyes widened as he opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald ring, the same deep green as her eyes, surrounded by sustainably sourced diamonds. Great minds think alike, she whispered as he slipped it onto her finger. They married 6 months later in a ceremony on the beach, with Ethan serving as Jackson's best man. The guest list included environmental activists, corporate executives, scientists, and politicians, a testament to the bridges they'd built together. Never thought I'd see the day when a billionaire shipping magnate marries a marine conservationist, Ethan joked during his toast. But these two prove that with enough love and compromise, even the most unlikely pairs can find their way back to each other. As they danced under the stars, Hannah in a simple silk gown and Jackson in a linen suit, he whispered, "No regrets." "Only that we wasted 5 years," she answered honestly. "Not wasted," Jackson corrected. "Those years apart made us who we are today. They taught us what really matters." 2 years later, Jackson stood in the nursery of their oceanfront home, cradling their newborn daughter as Hannah watched from the doorway. "She has your eyes," he said softly, gazing down at the baby's green eyes already alert and curious about the world. "And your determination," Hannah replied with a smile. "The nurse said she's never seen a newborn hold her head up so quickly." Jackson gently placed their daughter in her crib, wrapping an arm around Hannah as they watched the baby drift to sleep. "I was thinking," he said quietly, "we should take her to see the reef restoration next month. It's almost complete now." Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder, starting her environmental education early. She should see what her parents helped create, not just the research center or the foundation, but the actual results. The healing oceans, the returning wildlife. "I love that idea," Hannah said, "and I love you." Jackson kissed the top of her head, overwhelmed with gratitude for the second chance they'd been given. "You know, when I flew in for Ethan's wedding, I never imagined I'd be standing here with you, with our daughter." "Sometimes the best journeys take us right back to where we started," Hannah mused, "but with new eyes. And in my case, a better heart," Jackson added. "You taught me that success isn't measured in billions or buildings, but in the positive impact we leave behind." Outside their window, the ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon, no longer a barrier between their worlds, but the very thing that had brought them together, twice. The tide was coming in, waves reaching toward the shore before retreating, a constant rhythm of leaving and returning that mirrored their own journey back to each other. Jackson Kane, the billionaire who had once let love slip away in pursuit of ambition, now understood the true measure of wealth. Standing beside the woman he loved, watching their child sleep peacefully, knowing that together they were building a legacy more meaningful than any fortune could provide. "To think," he whispered, "all of this almost never happened." "But it did," Hannah reminded him, intertwining her fingers with his, "and that's all that matters now.